creepy and appears to be more of a gross person. But the reality is, both of them are doing something that's really up, right? Like, it's up to meet a girl in high school, 10 years later, hire a private investigator to track her down. Like, that is not okay. But yet, because he is compared with someone who is more explicitly creepy and gross and weird, we're meant to be like, oh, well, Ben Stiller actually loves her.
Yeah. It's kind of similar to the nice guy trope when you think about it. Didn't she end up dating, wasn't the, like, ending of that movie she was dating Brett Favre?
Yes. Yeah.
I spoiled it for everyone. But I knew that, and I haven't seen it.
And this movie also came out, like,
that's true. What's
25 years ago, right? If you haven't seen There's Something About Mary, you're probably not going to see it. And, like, you deserve to have it spoiled. You've had a long time.
Right. And I haven't seen it, and somehow I knew that. So, The Graduate is another good example of this. Passengers. Did you see Passengers?
I didn't see it. I wanted to see it because the trailer made it seem lighthearted, and, you know, there's a robot butler, which I thought was charming. But then when I read reviews and actually unpacked what's going on, I was so grossed out that I did not want to see it. And in fact, I recall thinking, how did they market this movie in such a lighthearted, playful way? I remember the trailer saying something like, it's the sexiest movie you'll see all season. And I was like, ooh, I want to see a sexy movie.
Oh, la la.
And when I read the actual breakdown of the plot, I was horrified.
Yeah, I watched it on a plane, and I remember having this kind of disjointed, because I could tell I was supposed to want them to end up together, but I just couldn't get behind it. I was so furious that Chris Pratt's character had done this thing.
Okay, so for those who haven't seen it, break down what happened. So spoiler alert if you haven't seen Passenger.
Yes. Chris Pratt, I don't know how many people, it's a lot of people are on this ship in space going somewhere on a journey. And Chris Pratt wakes up like 100 years before he's supposed to, because they're all in hypersleep, or whatever you call that, when you're put to sleep in space so that you don't age for the duration of the journey. You wake up at the same age you were when you went to sleep. So he wakes up super early. No one else is awake. He can't fix the problem. So he's just hanging out with this robot butler that you mentioned. He's getting drunk with vodka every night. He's growing a beard. He is super lonely. So you're supposed to, and you do. I mean, that's terrible.
But he has a robot butler.
He does. But I guess the robot butler can only get you so far. I remember liking the robot butler. But so he starts to explore the passengers because you can pull up information about them, data about them. And he finds Jennifer Lawrence's character, who's an author, and he goes through all of her files, and he decides, I really think I like this girl, and, you know, I bet she'd like me too. I think we'd fit. And he wakes her up. And this is 10 years in, so it's going to be 90 years before they get there. She's going to die before they get there. And at one point in the movie, I remember her saying, you've murdered me. This is a death sentence. And I thought, yeah, kind of. And eventually, they fall in love. Who's an author, and he goes through all of her files, and he decides, I really think I like this girl, and, you know, I bet she'd like me too. I think we'd fit. And he wakes her up. And this is 10 years in, so it's going to be 90 years before they get there. She's going to die before they get there. And at one point in the movie, I remember her saying, you've murdered me. This is a death sentence. And I thought, yeah, kind of. And eventually, they fall in love, and I just could never get over it.
So that almost seems to be like a mix of a lot of these different tropes, right?
Yeah.
Nice guy who does something creepy, but out of pure love.
Yeah.
You know, wearing her down, because if you're on a spaceship forever with someone, maybe eventually you're like, well, yeah, what are you going to do, be mad forever that he's basically giving you a death sentence?
Yeah, and you've got no one else to talk to.
Except for that robot butler.
That's true. And I believe I remember they had separate times. It's going to be 90 years before they get there. She's going to die before they get there. And at one point in the movie, I remember her saying, you've murdered me. This is a death sentence. And I thought, yeah, kind of. And eventually, they fall in love, and I just could never get over it.
So that almost seems to be like a mix of a lot of these different tropes, right?
Yeah.
Nice guy who does something creepy, but out of pure love.
Yeah.
You know, wearing her down, because if you're on a spaceship forever with someone, maybe eventually you're like, well, yeah, what are you going to do, be mad forever that he's basically giving you a death sentence?
Yeah, and you've got no one else to talk to.
Except for that robot butler.
That's true. And I believe I remember they had separate times when they would visit the robot butler, because they were mad at each other for about 30 minutes of a 2-hour film.
See, I want a spin-off with the robot butler where he doesn't kill anybody. Yes. And he has healthy relationships with other women or men robots, whoever, you know.
Whatever he wants.
Not a robot gender binary up in here.
Yeah,
But yeah, a movie where, you know, he has a relationship with another robot, and that robot decides it's over, and he, you know, deals with it in a healthy way. It's a better movie.
We should make this movie, Bridget.
Yes, we should.
I'm sure Hollywood would be all about getting that produced.
I agree.
But Hollywood had no problem producing a little film/book series you might have heard of, Twilight. And Twilight is a very good example of stalker as love.
Yeah, so I haven't seen Twilight all the way through. I've seen it in chunks when it's on TBS and I'm like hungover. So I've seen like the middle, and then I saw the end, and then I maybe saw the first part of a different, like Twilight 2. So I feel like altogether, I get the gist.
You got the gist.
I get the
probably,
gist.
I would say you probably did. I tried to read the books, and then I couldn't get through the first one, which is very rare for me. And I went to see the first movie when it came out in theaters with my friends who were into it. And I remember clearly laughing at one part that I was not supposed to laugh at. And this little girl in front of me turned around and said, "I will cut you." Okay. I don't mean to disparage. It's not my thing. And there is some very creepy undertones in it. I can't remember. The author Stephanie Meyer wrote a prequel / happening at the same time as the first one, but from Edward's point of view book. I can't remember what it was called, but there's a scene where he's watching Bella sleep, you know.
As you do.
Edward, yes. Edward the vampire, you're on Team Edward. You want him to get with Bella. He's watching her sleep, and he thinks to himself, you know, this is creepy. It's kind of stalkery. I shouldn't do this. But he keeps doing it night after night. And then, one night Bella wakes up, and she's kind of flattered by it. Oh, you're watching me sleep. Oh. But it's creepy and weird. Yeah. And I was talking with Bridget earlier, and there's this whole thing I want to talk about on another episode of women falling in love with monsters. That kind of represents, like, sex and your sexual desire being this monstrous thing. If you haven't gotten the memo already, I really like horror movies and books, and I have a lot of thoughts about them. But not that Twilight is particularly scary, apart from the stalker. There's also Angel of Buffy. That's one that I